Woo! Yes, you are now listening to the sounds of Sports Reports Disordered, soon to be brought to you by Liquid Death. I am your unorthodox statistician. Going left so much you thought I was Southpaw. Uh-oh! 2-5. And I got with me the even kill. Born in Texas, raised in VA, representing New Jerusalem. He told me to tell the world, don't you dare compare Mariah Carey to Whitney Houston. New Jerusalem in the house, stand up. Do not bring feelings to a fact fight.
Shout out Queen Latifah.
Do me a favor out there. Like, review, subscribe, rate, share. Do all the free things. Do all the good things. And we're going to have a conversation about NIL. We're going to recap Upset Bloody Saturday. We're going to recap the NFL. We're going to talk about the NBA Western Conference because we're about 2.5 weeks away from the season starting. So 2 weeks actually. 2 weeks actually. So let's get to it. So, right, Mr. Logical.
Real quick, before we start this conversation.
Okay. What you got?
Mike has been doing an outstanding job behind the scenes. He tracks all of our data. I just kind of bring the personality to the show. So he tracks the data. He's checking everything down. We're approaching over 100,000 views here pretty soon. So I was going to mail this and then have this grand opening thing, but I figured I'd just do it now. So, I want to get him a gift, man. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of tracking, a lot of people reaching out to people. So I got him a gift. Especially for his first place Washington Commanders.
Yes.
So I'm gonna get this in the mail to you. That's why I asked for your address the other day. I was like, I'm gonna just do it now because he's always giving my flowers every single week with the introductions. I never really felt like I pay him a proper due. So
that's awesome.
Got him
the first Burger King W.
Yeah, so it's pretty big. I have a pretty big head. You can see it's pretty solid. So hopefully it's a thing at the U.S. Post Office I can fit it in. Other than that, I'll figure it out. But yeah, so I just want to give Mike his flowers, man. It's a lot of work behind the scenes. Shout out to Faye for being motivator. Shout out to people who watch the show a lot. Shout out to Otis. Chris hit me up. My crew, old fat looking niggas. So we, say everybody doing it. My man Dre, Solution of Excuses. Shout out to Rach for all the merch that she makes. She's making something for you. It's coming in the mail. I know it's not a surprise, but I just want to, reach out to the people who put a lot of hard work into the show.
For sure. We still looking for Q too.
Yeah, Q. I know you've been silent since your teams are falling apart, but it's cool, man. Everybody can't have a Kirk Cousins.
You know what I'm saying? We still love you, bro. We still love you. Come on back. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I appreciate that. Now. You know what I'm saying? But we gonna get things started off with get it off my chest. The one and only Jimbo Fisher last week had some comments. I'm gonna read a couple of them real quick, and then Mr. Logical and I will respond to them. So the first comment that stood out to me was, quote, I thought really when NIL came in, we thought it would be good because some of this, there were teams that were doing NIL before NIL was popular, okay? I thought NIL would at least make it fair. Take the cheating out of ball. It's made it worse. And then the second statement, he said that the NIL made cheating worse, unquote. So let's hear it, Mr. Logical. What you thinking?
Don't piss in my pocket and tell me it's raining. Shout out to the podcast that stole my saying. It's cool. Just, give me credit next time. That's crap. And we all knew that wasn't the case. We all knew that it wasn't going to be a level playing field. What it was going to do, it leveled out for the upper echelon teams. So your top 30, 40 programs in America, that you got a real shot because you could just offer a little bit more money. So instead of Alabama, I use this as a case to put on all the time, Alvin Kamara was the 4th or 5th running back on Alabama's roster when he got to the campus. Now, that 4th or 5th guy, instead of being there behind 2 juniors, a senior, and an outstanding 5-star freshman, he could be like, yo, Tulane called, said they'll give me $800,000. $800,000 at 18, 19, or 39, that's a good number to go do a job. So that's what it's really helping. It's helping a little bit of that balance. But the transfer portal is also taking guys from Tulane, Akron, Arizona, like, all these schools that are popular enough and good enough to get a good money. They have great equipment, guys working out, great nutrition plan. And now schools like Tennessee are plucking them, Virginia Tech's plucking those guys. So it's like it's working the way it was going to work based off of what was happening behind the scenes. It just now it's out in the open. Now the curtain's open. It's the Wizard of Oz. It's still the Wizard of Oz, but now the curtain's open. You see a homeboy on the microphone making a scene and everything else. Now it's just a matter of, are you willing to compete with these schools financially and schematically and just in your recruiting? Nick Saban stepped away, and one of the reasons was he didn't want to have to deal with it, which is fine. I get it. I get as a coach, we talk about these guys who are redshirting after the 4 games, that this is a new rule. I get you have a game on Saturday. You got a big game coming up that's going to get you to potentially 6-0, and 3 of your starters who were promised, SUVs don't get them. And they're like, you know what? I'm redshirting. I'm going to go to this school that's going to give me the SUV. That could be pretty stressful.
Right.
But you got to be ready. Next man up. That's their leverage. It might not be the best move, but that's their leverage.
Well, we saw the transfer portal pay off this weekend. The name Diego Pavia. Does that mean anything to anybody? If not, let me tell you why it should. Because last year, he was the starting quarterback at New Mexico State. Mr. Logical and I talked about him pissing on New Mexico's field. He went into Jordan-Hare last year and walked out with a 21-point win over Auburn. Turn that into this year, he just beat Alabama the other day. So, this guy used the transfer portal to take out his own personal vendetta on the state of Alabama. So now when you look at this, everybody thinks of the transfer portal as get rich quick. And we saw a school like, say, Florida State, bring in a Keon Coleman, bring in a Jarrett Verse, a few others, Johnny Wilson, and they rode it all the way to a 13-0 season until that Orange Bowl. And then this year, they tried to do the same thing again. They went out and got DJ Uyangale, thought like, hey, let's go get this senior quarterback, put him in our system. Even though we lost a lot of people, let's just throw this senior in there and everything's going to remain the same. Only problem is we learned you still need your high school recruits because, as Mr. Logical would say, you got to have your foundation before you can extend your driveway. So Jimbo Fisher, on one account, played the transfer portal because he was at Florida State, won a national title, had a Heisman quarterback, Jameis Winston. He was making $5.5 million a year. And then
he transferred before the sanctions came in.
Yeah. And then some guys down in College Station with a lot of oil money said, hey, why don't you come down here and make $7.5? Now, the problem is, and this is where it gets a little hypocritical with these guys, Jimbo left before the season ended. On Wednesday night, he said, I am not going to Texas A&M. I am dedicated to this university. And then on Saturday, there was an interim coach coaching the game, because he went to Texas A&M. So I don't think that we're seeing anything abnormal. The only difference is that everybody has access to these players now. Because back in the day, to your point, back in the day of Bear Bryant, they would sign 120 players, just keep them on the bench so they wouldn't go to Auburn or wouldn't go to Ole Miss. Now these guys can move, but not only that.
And another thing, coaches used to be able to dictate where you could transfer to. So if you're an Alabama player and you want to go to Auburn because, I'm from Alabama, it's in-state, that Nick Saban can be like, nope,
not another SEC school.
And not honestly, it wasn't like that long ago. As recently as this last change in the transfer portal rules. Before that, so we're thinking 4 or 5 years ago.
Speaking of NIL, real quick. Speaking of NIL,
you can't transfer, and if you go somewhere else, you got to sit out a year.
Speaking of NIL, LeBron, when you gonna get this Akron program popping? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, no, as I was looking at it, trying to figure out this whole NIL ordeal, these players are starting to sit out now because they're saying that they're not getting their promises fulfilled.
Promises, yeah.
So I wanted to know how you felt about that. Like, do you think that there's a thing to this, or do you think that that's just it's easy for them to blame the school because they'll have the public on their side?
I don't know if they'll have the public because the public seems to lean towards whoever's in charge. Like we talked about how people turn on players who want more money from the billionaire. So they'll be mad at the millionaire for wanting more money from the billionaire, but not at the billionaire for not wanting to give the millionaire a little bit more money. It's a double-edged sword. If you have viable future destinations, then maybe redshirt works. To me, the fact that you didn't get this initial conversation, these initial promises in writing, shows a little bit of immaturity in negotiating. And like I said, we live and we learn. So if you go into negotiation and you just rest on the promises of people and not the documentation of these promises, and then 5 games in, you're like, no, they didn't give it to me. If you learn from that, and now the next school that wants to promise you the SUV or promise you the $50,000 and you get it in writing, okay, that makes sense. But if you do this twice and it's like, oh, they didn't give me what they promised me either, I'm like, you should learn the first time. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be that common because, like I said, I grew up an Army brat, and I was in the Air Force since I turned 18. I've moved all the time. I like relocating. I like seeing with the new base, the new area, the new people. I like seeing that stuff happen a lot. But I lived my whole life doing that. I don't think everyone likes doing that. I don't know if you really want to go from Virginia Tech to Vanderbilt to Oregon like 3 years in a row. Your family's trying to come see you play. You're from Pennsylvania. Now your family has to figure out how to get to 6 or 7 home games. You have West, so it's like I don't understand why people really want to do it, but
that's why Matthew Sluka was such a supernova of a situation, because throughout his college career he played at Holy Cross, up in Massachusetts, and was a pretty good player there. His coach went to James Madison, Bob Chesney, and then he came out to UNLV all the way out in Vegas, and he's a senior now. 43.8% completion percentage, like I brought up. So
not an NFL,
not an NFL quarterback. You know what I mean? So you're looking at this as I'm trying to get paid. UNLV allegedly promised me $100,000. I haven't got it yet. Well, you know what? I know that I don't have this NFL future, so I'm going to find me another school that's willing to give me a little bit of money so I can maximize my capital before I graduate or before I run out of eligibility.
Yeah. It's not going to work for everybody. And the thing is, like, I'm not going to harp on a handful of players, because I get it that in order to start a revolution, you need a second wave. Like, you have your initial person that stands up and say, we got to do something about this. You need a second person, and then it snowballs. But with this, I don't think it's the same. Because if a guy has NFL prospects, if he's projected to be a first or a second round pick, then he's probably going to get his money, because he's going to have more suitors, more people trying to give him money. I think he's going to get more money in briefcases, money through Venmo, money through Cash App. However you get your money in these NIL deals, he's going to get it because he's projected first or second round pick. If you're not one of these picks, then you're going to have to maximize your leverage the best you can. Mm-hmm. I don't think that many players are going to roll the dice, because you can't, even at a young age, you can get blackballed. Not even blackballed, you can just be flat out replaced. Mm-hmm. It's like, there's a lot of guys who are 6'4", 235 that can play linebacker.
Well, UNLV is going to have another problem, because Hodge Malik Williams then came in there and, he's playing better than Sluka was. I know they lost to Syracuse the other day, but he's playing better than Sluka was and actually throwing the ball downfield. So, people might be calling for his services too. And that goes back to Jimbo's point of, he brought up, like, maybe we need revenue sharing, we need this and we need that. And I don't necessarily agree with that, because I don't want to change college football into the NFL. There's a reason that they're separate, but
Correct.
But I just want to see the schools actually on the hook to pay these kids versus having these collectives of boosters and fans. And you saw what Tennessee's doing, adding the fee to the season tickets and everything so that so the fan is still footing the bill. Because they're like, hey, you're coming to the game. You want us to be successful. You want to scream Rocky Top at the top of your lungs. So you invest in this instead of me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird to me too. Cause like one part, like I want to disagree, not just for argument's sake, but it should be incumbent on the schools, but I don't know if they're going to pay all sports. They're not going to pay all the other athletes. So, because I remember a lot of the allegations that were being dropped by, Ohio State, USC, Michigan, Miami, a lot of those conversations were people outside of the school were giving these players money.
Mm-hmm.
So now that is legal, give them the money.
Right.
Because the school is like, listen, we're obligated for your health and safety and your education. Yes, we're profiting off you playing. You didn't negotiate that deal. The deal you negotiated was to use your name and your face and your likeness to get paid. So go do that.
Well,
it's not a mandate on the school. Yes, it's a double-edged sword, but that's the piece where they find themselves wrapped in right now.
Well, there needs to be a compromise. So the same way that everybody's upset that these kids are making the decisions to leave, we can't forget that at the end of every season, the coach doesn't have to renew your scholarship. So maybe the compromise is contracts, like a 1 to 2 year deal or something along those lines where you're on the team. Like, I can't take your scholarship. You get whatever we agree to, or you agree to money wise, because you can't even negotiate the you can't even negotiate the NIL deal until you're enrolled at the university.
Back to my famous phrase, don't piss my pocket.
Yeah.
Just take that verbiage out, because a lot of the conversation post players showing up in the NIL conversation is kind of shrouded in there's not a lot of oversight to what NIL really means. And to me, I look at it like you're here, you can sell your name and image to profit. That seems simple enough. And I know they're going to probably stipulate and put more rules and more obligations. But to even have that, you can't negotiate, it's like, then what's the point? Like, if I'm a Texas Tech coach and I'm like, listen, Lubbock, Cadillac, and Buick, they are allowing players. They're giving us 10 SUVs for our recruits. You guys have access to it. We'll get you on the insurance. What? Like, I should be able to say that if I want to get a kid to come to the school. I shouldn't have to just be like, oh, this is a great program, academic. I should be able to give them every single thing that they are potentially allowed to do. Like, hey, you can negotiate a deal with these people. We are in contract with these people. The same way you do any other kind of deal. Like when you sign with an agency, they let you know, like, hey, we have a great partnership with Nike and Puma. You negotiate your shoe deal with these guys because of our relationship. Hey, we have a relationship with Lubbock Oil and Refinery, and they pay for you to come to these events or whatever the case may be.
Right.
You should be allowed to do that. You shouldn't try to low-key fake handcuff the schools in this guise and this fallacy of control. Is like, you don't have any. You didn't have any before.
Right. And then, in other news, disheartening news, maybe depending on how you feel about it and where your allegiances lie, the New York Jetropolitans have decided no mas. Robert Saleh must go. Aaron Rodgers wins again. The Jets have won 2 games out of their 5 on the season, and now Aaron Rodgers has won a game off the field.
I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it seems very clear that relationship wasn't blossoming.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, The schools are definitely mismanaging the leverage, right? Regina, like you're saying, they're taking full control of their leverage. I talked about the baseball teams always being on strike and getting whatever they want. They need to take a page out of their book. But Robert Saleh, I think he's sitting pretty. He's probably got a couple years left on his contract. He was in a no-win situation.
Oh yeah, I got numbers for you too.
The decisions of the Jets did not make any sense. And I give a lot of credit to watching Nick Wright on First Things First, and he kind of like highlighted a few things that I also thought as well. But he's like, you trade for Hassan Reddick, who didn't want to stay in Philly because they wouldn't give him a contract extension that he felt was worth his performance that he earned.
Mm-hmm.
And then you figure you trade for him and not have that negotiation the way you give him what he earned. He's like, I'm not showing up there either. Like, I didn't want to go to Philly. Like, I'm not coming there either for the same issue I had there. You brought in a bunch of guys who are injury prone to play with a quarterback who's coming off injury. And I get it. Like, when I hear about these injuries, ACLs, PCLs, MCLs, pec tears and all sort of stuff, I'm like, I don't know how they made it. I had to rip some wax string off a balloon earlier, and like 6 of my fingers were hurting. I'm like, this is bothersome. Like, I don't know how these guys go out there and play, all his injuries. Like, my son gets his knee taped up every week before the game. Like, he has to leave class like 30 minutes early, him and like 5 other kids to get taped up and shouldered and everything just so they can play the game. So these guys coming back from injury, I'm assuming if he's ready to go, he's ready to go. The problem was the guy calling the plays is inadequate at his job, and it's very clear. So Robert Saleh brought in your quintessential diva quarterback who had 2 good years, and then an average year. So he had an average year, 2 great years with MVP, and then another average year, missed the playoffs, comes in and gets injured. And he's not the kind of guy that just makes your team better. He is just good at what he does.
Right.
It's a difference. Patrick Mahomes last night, Juju Smith-Schuster had 130 yards receiving last night. He had 260 yards with New England last year. Mahomes makes guys better. Even though he's not playing great this year, he makes guys better.
He's the league in interceptions, by the way.
Yeah. Kelsey had 9 catches last night. Kareem Hunt played 5 years for the Browns. Had like 100-yard rushing game. He had 100 yards last night. So like things like that. Aaron Rodgers is never going to give you that. Aaron Rodgers is not going to go to the red zone 6 or 7 times and not get touchdowns and be able to just wash that away, come back on the field and perform. It's just not what he does. There's no history of it. And Robert Saleh basically, once he didn't hug him, the thumbnail we used a couple weeks ago, that was it. That was a kiss of death.
Well, here's this is how you spell dysfunction. So over the next little bit here, so 2 years, Robert Saleh from the New York Jets is going to make more than $583,000 per month, more than $134,000 per week, $19,000 per day, $799 per hour, and $13.32 per minute.
I saw that.
That's how you spell dysfunction, ladies and gentlemen. And when you look at the New York Jets, I'm not going to sit up here and act like Robert Saleh, was Bill Belichick in the making, or, he was running around here on Bill Walsh status or something along those lines, because he wasn't. There were a lot of games where his teams fell behind. They looked flat. They didn't look very prepared, but you got to contextualize some of that. Because when you look at Robert Saleh's tenure with the Jets, there was a lot of Zach Wilson mixed in with some Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian. There was some Mike White in there. So, so first of all, we talk about
game last year. They look awful.
Yeah, we talk about how these quarterbacks,
AV offense.
We talk about how these quarterbacks, like Sam Darnold, for example, since he played for the Jets, we talk about how, wow, look at him. He's got an offensive coach now, Kevin O'Connell, and he looks the part. He looks part of what we thought Sam Darnold could be at one point. But when he was with the Jets, he looked awful. So now you look at the Jets, it's the same scenario. Like you hired this head coach who was never a head coach before, defensive coordinator with the 49ers. You bring him in, and then you bring Zach Wilson in, not, number 2 draft pick. So we'll give you a pass. You thought you drafted your future, but you didn't. And then you had Trevor Siemian and Tim Boyle and Mike White waiting in the wings. So then you fast forward now, you make Jeff Ulbrich the interim, who Mr. Logical knows well because he was the Falcons defensive coordinator, for about great. 5 years. And I think he was the defensive coordinator. He was on the staff. He wasn't defensive coordinator yet, but I think he was on the staff when you guys made the Super Bowl. And I think he was the linebackers coach, but
potentially on staff. But yeah,
so he's been around.
He's never been top 5 or 10 in sacks, quarterback pressures, turnovers. The year they went to the Super Bowl, they just scored like the 8th most points all time in the history of the NFL.
Right. And that's the problem, right? Because as the interim, you would think theoretically, like, hey, I just got rid of this defensive coach. My offense isn't popping right now. Let me put an offensive guy in there or whatever, somebody from the offensive staff, and let's see if we can, change this around or whatever the case may be.
A rumor I read, like I couldn't confirm it, but it was Nathaniel Hackett was demoted from play calling by Robert Saleh. And then after that, Saleh was notified that he was fired and he was escorted from the building.
Yeah,
there's
no video footage. Get to see the players.
There was no video footage. I think these are just reports. And I believe a lot of times people use the media to spread misinformation, disinformation. So it might have been a situation where he was like, yo, I'm out, or maybe he cut somebody out and they were like, you got to leave, and he walked out. But listen, as a person that's been escorted out of the DMV, it happens. It's not always because you're completely out of control. It's just the person you're dealing with might not want to hear what you have to say, and you might have some valid points, like I did the day that the dude with the gun walked me out of the DMV. But I still got my license. I didn't have to ride around this permit, at a 40-year-old. But sometimes you might have to cut somebody out. I think,
and apparently Woody Johnson met with Aaron Rodgers at some point yesterday.
And said he didn't mention it.
Yeah, he said he didn't mention Saleh at all.
I'm about to change the trajectory of your season, and you're 40, and I don't mention it, and you're like, you are our cash cow.
And look, I'm no Aaron Rodgers fan by any stretch of the imagination, but you can't tell me that a quarterback of his stature is not going to be told, this is what I'm doing with your team.
It's the equivalent of LeBron not knowing they were firing Darvin Ham.
Right.
Even if he wanted it or didn't want it, that conversation will be for them, because that person has to make career decisions based off of especially when it's long in the tooth. Like Aaron just like, you know what? This is too much dysfunction for me. I'm shutting it down. I'm going to turn in my retirement papers. I'm going to go call games with Tony Romo and Tom Brady. Yeah, you got to give him that. You have to extend that
Jeopardy when it was on the table. That's what he should have did. The Cowboys would, but now that you bring that up, this is McCarthy's last year.
Jacksonville wouldn't fire Peterson without talking to Trevor Lawrence.
Oh, that's already in the works. Don't worry about it.
I'm just saying, like, these conversations come up like, hey, brace yourself. There's going to be breaking news regarding our team. Right. After a tough loss when you threw 3 interceptions.
Like, yo, just don't even turn on SportsCenter today. Like, I'm about to let you know right now.
I heard a stat when I was watching the game. It said Aaron Rodgers hasn't come back from being down 17 in 6 years. And I get 17 is 3 possessions. But they were down 17 in the first half. You get a touchdown, you get a stop, you get another touchdown. It's not out of the norm to get a couple of touchdowns in a row and then go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
He is just not the guy. He's not the guy that you bring in when your team is partially in a rebuild. And the Jets are an organization that they have failed consistently every single time they're in this position. You're in a rebuild.
You're right, but you still don't have the future because you went and got Tyrod Taylor. You drafted Jordan Travis, who was a 5th-round pick. So you still don't even have somebody for him to mentor anyway.
That's what I'm saying. They just and people say the New York media.
Yeah, that was on Get Up, by the way. Yeah,
Jet fans love their team. They're gonna come to MetLife Stadium. They're gonna tailgate. They're gonna watch the game. They're gonna cheer along, whether it's cold off the breeze off the East River or the Hudson River, whatever the case may be.
Whether you're playing a game against the Falcons where nobody's effective in the rain.
When it's just 50 handoffs per team, they're going to be there.
Yeah, where was Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett? Where were they 2 weeks ago when they lost to the Broncos 10-9 to a rookie? Remember, we talked about that. Like, hey, the Jets have these quarterbacks on their schedule that, should set them up. Like, even though neither one of us picked them to make the playoffs, neither one of us thought they were a good team anyway.
They had a few wide open fast break layups with no contesting defense, and then they actively butchered that away.
Right.
And it's because there has to be some semblance of a hierarchy and a meritocracy in an organization.
Right.
I currently, like I said, I'm a contractor for the Air Force. The unit I worked in, people didn't like the commander. People didn't like the director of operations. The two of them kind of like bonded together, and they had their mission. And people outside of those offices, we couldn't understand the why.
Right.
So we got a new regime in. We understand the why, and even when you don't understand something, the new commander comes to the desk and he explains. Boom. We got this, and this. Sometimes you got to charge the hill, and we get it. Military, I did it. You see the flag, you see all the retirement. Like, I understand that. But in the same sense, people still have to understand the why.
Right.
The Jets don't have the person that can tell Aaron, we're running the ball 7 times in a row.
Right.
Don't check to a pass play.
Right.
And these are the runs we're going to run. Or you're going to throw this screen pass. No, you're not going to look for that because you think this seam route's open in cover 3 and you're going to get Garrett Wilson because you guys aren't on the same page. It is not working. Check it to Breece Hall. Check it to this 20-year-old man-child we have coming out of the backfield.
Allen. Yeah.
Give it to him. Maybe some quick stuff to Garrett Wilson, but everything up the seam, you guys aren't on the same.
At least remember that you have Garrett Wilson on the field, and
he went to him like 30. He got
a bunch of targets against Minnesota. Yeah, and to answer your question, and to answer your question, Residente, Greenberg, from my gathering, was basically not a fan of Saleh, but felt that you should at least have given him 12 games this year to see if they're sitting around 500 or so. I don't know why he chose 12 games, but that was his takeaway.
Well, I think you can fire him whenever you feel like you need to fire him.
Well, I think you let him coach out the season because I mean, because for me, it's like
I gotta like being. I gotta want to be around you. I wouldn't fire you if I like being around you.
If I want to fire somebody first, I have to actually realize if you are the problem or not. Because at the end of the day, they let Aaron Rodgers hijack their franchise, but they're paying him too much to tell him to take a walk. Like, Aaron Rodgers can leave, like you said, but the Jets are paying him too much to tell him to take a walk. So Saleh is just the guy left standing. I mean, I think he probably would have got fired after the season anyway. You know what I mean? But
he probably, if Aaron Rodgers played out last season healthy, they'd be in the same boat. 9-8. Struggling to make 10-7 at best. They probably won a bunch of games 13-10 because Aaron Rodgers didn't have a great last year in Green Bay. If you don't get him Devontae Adams, then it's going to look like, because I look at it like this, that's the only place Devontae would want to go. So, but when you fire the coach, it has to give him pause. It has to give him a little concern. Like, are you guys serious?
Like, I'm already dealing with this.
Derek Carr got injured, so he's out for 3 or 4 weeks potentially. So maybe it still opens the door for the Jets. So maybe they'll still get like a gift that they don't deserve because they haven't really worked for it. It's just going to kind of land. Or very similar to how Peyton Manning just landed in Denver because they were just looking around like, oh, there's no other place to go. I'll just go to Denver.
it could be the team that I told you that Dallas was going to walk into their stadium on Sunday night and walk out victorious.
He's not going to Pittsburgh.
I know the Steelers made their aggressive move to try to get Brandon Ayuk in the offseason. I think he would have been a better fit than what Devontae Adams would be. But, looking at the Steelers, are you concerned?
Yeah. I'm concerned because Justin Fields looks like a rookie and they call plays for him like he's a rookie. Like his plays look like plays you call for a rookie quarterback. Okay. Not a guy learning a system. We get it. Guys learn new systems all the time. Offensive coordinators get hired on every year. Jared Goff has a great season this year. The offensive coordinator is probably gone. Caleb Williams have a good year. The offensive coordinator is probably gone. The Houston's off. Like coordinators go every year. You get new systems. Kirk Cousins has thrown for 450 yards with 3 different teams. Sam Darnold was a terrible quarterback with the Jets and a mediocre one with the Panthers. Now he's, MVP chatter with the Vikings because the guy calling plays. Justin Fields does not look like a guy that's been in the league who's approaching his second contract. That's the problem. I don't think the wide receiver core. I don't think Pickens is any good. I think Freiermuth is a good tight end, but there's no threat. I think Najee Harris basically just runs into people and just doesn't see holes.
Be nice to have Jalen Warren, right?
it'd be nice to have a running back that make a jump cut and accelerate instead of just plowing into people like a tight end with the ball out of the backfield. Like it just, I don't know who calls the shots in Pittsburgh, but if we can kind of equate this to college, Nick Saban for years, even while they were winning national championships, it was big defensive linemen, big running backs, quarterbacks that weren't going to throw interceptions. It changed. He started going 4 wide. He brought in guys like Lane Kiffin, Bill O'Brien, Sarkisian, guys who were looking to be offensive innovators and kind of let him do his thing because, I can get the players here, but if I get them here, goddammit, you better give me 40 points.
Yeah, they were saying that Nick Saban would send Kiffin basically on missions, go to Michigan State and go to this place, go to Oregon and come back with concepts.
Yeah. I don't know if Mike Tomlin does that. I think they draft offensive players the way they draft defensive players. Whereas we talked about, remember the old school Colts, the Peyton Manning Colts, Bob Sanders, probably like 5'8", 208.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could hit a brick wall down if he needed to, but they had a small, fast defense. And if Peyton Manning can get them up 10, 14-0, 14-3, then that defense was effective.
Right.
But if the other team could run the ball downhill, it was ineffective. I think Pittsburgh does a reverse. I think Pittsburgh has that vaunted, big, solid, strong defense, and then they match it with this big, solid, strong offense. And it's like, you need a fluid offense. You need an offense that can wiggle through holes because Najee Harris is not going to plow over. He's not going to plow through the guard and the tackle or the guard and the center up the middle and then get that's just not how it's going to work. You got to get them on the edge. You got to put some speed in. But Justin Fields is out there looking like this is the first time he's seen cover 2, cover 3, man defense, zone blitz, fire.
So I know that they're 3-2. You know what I mean? They started out 3-0. They've lost their last 2. Are you?
It's very similar to that Ben Roethlisberger 11-0 from a few years
ago. Yeah. Are you in a place where you would I don't want to say overreact because I don't know how you feel about it. Would you bench him or think about benching him?
I wouldn't bench him. I'd make a move for a true number 2 wide receiver or even a number 1. I don't think Devontae Adams would go there simply because they look the same reason I felt with Lamar. I think Lamar is a good quarterback. I think he's a great athlete. I think he's a great player, good quarterback. And I think he makes more plays off schedule. And I think Devontae Adams wants an on schedule. I'm here. I'm at 8 yards on this curl route. Give me the ball.
See, I'm concerned too, but I'm concerned about Dallas. You know,
the Cowboys.
The
Cowboys concerns. I'm not concerned about the Cowboys because we already knew what they were. They can't run the ball. They brought in Zeke.
Yeah, but I mean, Dak hasn't even looked close to decent this season. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, he came through when it mattered. You know, on the last drive the other night.
I think it took these guys a few games.
You know,
like remember how there was no 300-yard games for the first couple of weeks. And
but
now we're getting the same way.
It's not just a Dak thing, though. I mean, there's still a couple of guys out there, like Jared Goff's out there. Like, I feel that way about him. They had the bye week this week. They play each other this week. So we'll see how they come back
for 18 his last game, couple
I know,
100 yards.
5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Mahomes leading the league in interceptions. Like, some of these things, you know, are just fluid. But, you know, back to Pittsburgh for a second. You know, I saw something that concerned me a little bit, too, but it was on the other side of the ball. We know what TJ Watt brings to the table. You know, Patrick Queen hasn't been Patrick Queen, you know, but what caught my eye was Minkah Fitzpatrick. I remember when he first got to Pittsburgh, it was like the deal of the century. Like, oh my God, they went out and got somebody for their secondary.
It was very similar to how Jesse Bates' impact with the Falcons.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in his last 17 games, you know, no interceptions, he's averaging less than 5 tackles per game. Like, it's just, I don't want to say he's declining, or I don't, you know, I got to look at them more to see if it's a scheme thing.
Maybe the scheme. Maybe it's
maybe the scheme.
We talk about Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams was a great safety.
He's overrated anyway.
Didn't have a lot of interceptions, but it's like, well, he was playing more like a deep linebacker.
Right, but the difference is with Fitzpatrick, that's what he was doing, though. You know,
he switched it up.
Maybe that's why I got to look at it more. But it's just something that stood out to me. But in other upsets, you told me that Arizona was going to walk in and walk out with their hands up in the air. Kyler Murray, first play of the game, throwing up his hand like 45 yards from the end zone. He pulled a Tyreek Hill on the 49ers and said, I'm out of here. So I said, you know what? Okay, Kyler, you got you one. And then the 49ers came back. It was a back and forth game, really good game. And then, you know, I got the message in the chat, you know, why did Arizona go for 2? And I was just trying to explain it. I was like, so that way if they get a stop, they'll go down for the win instead of overtime. I didn't expect them to actually get the stop.
That's the thing. I saw Arthur Smith do it last year. It was probably maybe, I'm going to say 9 minutes left in the fourth. Atlanta was down 21-7. They got the touchdown, and then
don't be like that.
Smith for 2. Kyler, I like the NFL. I like what it's doing. It's not scripted. I'm gonna keep saying it every week because I don't know why people keep saying like they don't give a fuck about Taylor Swift. She's been popular for 15 years and she hasn't been at any football games, and the NFL has done just fine. I like what they're doing. I like what Kyler Murray's doing. I like the playmaker aspect of it. I know he's undersized. He's probably, if he walked in my house, he'd be the shortest person in here, and I'm not very tall. So I like what he's doing. Like I said, I like a team that just kind of relies on their identity. Like, listen, we got a quarterback that likes to sling the ball down the field. It's all backyard football, like
drawing it on your hand. You go there.
It's like you get in a huddle and like the play comes in, he just turns the headset off and like, yo, what do you see? Like, listen, man, he's off of me like 12 yards.
You think he ever waves off the coach? He's like, I got this.
Absolutely. I've seen he did it before. He did it at Kingsbury. Remember, like when they called a timeout and he was like yelling about it. Sometimes you gotta let playmakers be playmakers. Like I say the same thing about Lamar. But with that being said, the reason I think that works for Marvin Harrison Jr. because I don't know if Marvin Harrison Jr. has that whole I'm gonna be at 12 yards because this is the route. It's more like I'm gonna be open because this guy can't cover me. And Kyle's like, cool, I'm gonna slide to my left. You just keep coming across the sideline. I'm gonna throw it to the boundary, and you just toe tap it, and we will get 18 yards, and we'll press on.
And of course, by Marvin Harrison, he means Harvin Marison.
Yeah, that too.
Did you see this point differential stat going around? So
for who?
So the Houston Texans, point differential is -5. And they are 4-1. and the Bengals are at -12 and they're 1-4. So
Joe Burrow is leading the league in, I believe, 5 major quarterback. He's top 3 in like 5 major categories, include touchdowns, and they're 1-4. It's just the way. It's just the way the cookie. It's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Well, this is where you go back to
like him. It just sometimes you. I look at it like this. When I play video games, I know it's a video game. My goal when I get the ball back, if I'm up 1 possession, how do I get up 2? Like, how do I get up 2 possessions just in case something funky happens? Like, I got the ball in my hand. I can control the offense. I can control scoring opportunities. How do I go up 2 possessions to ensure that when the other team gets the ball back, they got to get it again no matter what? And I think in the Bengals games, they just didn't do that. No matter how great Joe Burrow was playing, they didn't get the stops that allowed them. They didn't get the stop and then the subsequent offensive drive to allow them to go up 2 possessions. Like, they would get stopped. And some teams are just able to do that. Houston, they are able to keep it close to where the other team just makes a mistake. I don't know why they were throwing the ball with 20 seconds left in the game, tied at 20, talking about Buffalo. I know you Josh Allen had a terrible day.
9 for 30.
And then maybe you're thinking, like, you know what? I don't know if we can survive in overtime. He did bounce his head off the
Hey, I was going to bring that up, right? You know, the smelling salts, he came right back. His ass should be on the bench.
They were like, listen, Josh isn't going to make it through an overtime, but we need to keep him on the field, but we got to get the hell up out of here. Can we get lucky? Very similar to how the Falcons got that.
It was nice knowing you, Sean McDermott. It was nice knowing you.
I think because you have Josh Allen healthy, you lost some pieces, and your division is butt.
I haven't been watching TV this week, but I better hear some people calling them out about that whole banging the head off the ground and keep it. I better hear some talk about that.
Realistically, as a fan of the sport, I don't want to sound apathetic. I don't want to sound like crass. I know I come off that way. But these guys are going to play as much football as they want.
No, I understand that.
You couldn't tell me shit at 26 about
I understand that, but we're talking about coming off of our conversation about Tua.
If I pass the protocol, you got to talk about awake, I'm going back on the field. And
no, that's fine, but I'm just saying that the outside noise needs to be on your ass. The outside noise needs to be on your ass.
Outside noise is why Miami put their quarterback on IR.
That ain't why. If Tua never had a concussion, before, he would still be playing.
No,
if he had never had a concussion before, they would have handled that totally differently.
I'm talking about this season.
I know. That's what I'm saying. If he had never had those other situations, he would be playing right now.
But that's going to save Buffalo because Buffalo's like, listen, the Jets just fired their coach. Mike McDaniels is completely just in the weeds.
Oh, I forgot people can't pay attention to more than one thing at a time.
The Patriots, I mean, come on.
Hey, Drake May starting?
Drake May came into the game 2 weeks ago with 47 seconds left, and he got hit 17 times.
And he about to get hit about 34 more times because he about to play against the Texans.
He not making it through that game. I literally watched him get hit. I was like, man, you down 3 possessions to the Jets in the Jets game. I know we're getting off track, but
the Thursday night game, yeah.
In that Thursday night game, he came in for Jacoby Brissett. He got hit. He probably dropped back 8. I'm gonna call it 10 times. I saw him getting up off of the ground 5 times. Mm-hmm. One of them was bad enough to where I thought he was gonna be in concussion protocol. So the AFC East is they're so riddled with just problems that occur.
Hey, Miami might still win this division,
but it's all happening in that division.
Right,
McDermott is safe because like everybody else made a mistake. Not necessarily, everyone else had a drastic problem. Miami lost their quarterback. The Patriots are playing their backup quarterback way too long, and they didn't draft any skill players. And now, the Jets fired their coach.
Yeah, Jets
and they have a quarterback that's underperforming. simultaneously with that firing.
Man, I gotta say real quick, whenever the Dodgers and the Padres get together, like they always got a classic in mind. And oh, by the way, we have a WNBA Finals set. The Minnesota Lynx and the New York Liberty, for those out there keeping track of that. But hey, the Jaguars got their first win. We saw Trevor Lawrence out here mistreating tablets, yelling at his wide receivers, going back and forth, but they still got it done against Joe Flacco and the Colts.
You got to cut somebody out every once in a while. Joe Flacco.
Sometimes you got to pop out and show him, huh?
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers, his last 28 games hasn't gone over 300 yards. Joe Flacco comes off the bench. Joe Flacco can lead a crib. Joe Flacco don't need to be at the stadium. He can show up. You can call him at the end of the first quarter. He gets there by halftime and gets you 250 in the second half. Some guys just know how to play the position. Some guys just know how to really get it done when it's crunch time. With no regard for, because he's way too old to be out there still playing.
Right.
Especially since he's not being sought after the way some of these older quarterbacks.
But hey, back in week one, I brought up the name Tank Bigsby. ETN, your job is in trouble, my friend. Joe.
You can't pay them both.
Yeah, Joe Flacco, 33 of 44, 359 and 3 touchdowns. Bigsby, who I just brought up, 13 rushes, 101 yards. Fire Gus Bradley. I don't know if that's you or you speaking for Lethal right there. But. So the Panthers, got done up by DJ Moore. Of course, I benched him on my fantasy team because why wouldn't I do that?
Not accurate. Some of those throws, DJ Moore is wide open, and it's like, dog, stop trying to aim the throw. Throw the ball. It's a little fool's gold. I would calm down with young Caleb. Jaden Daniels, some of his deep passes. They're right on point. He got to stop taking hits on the run. Obviously, you can't turn the ball over.
I'm interested. That's why I brought those two teams up together, because the Jaguars and the Bears actually play each other in London this weekend. So,
that's going to be tough, man. That's the Jaguars' second home.
We're going to see, but Jaden Daniels, right? Nervous fan over here, going to Baltimore this weekend. But Jaden Daniels, I'm here to say, is going to be what everybody says that Lamar Jackson is, and I don't know if I could pick Washington to beat Baltimore, but the thing that I'm enjoying about Washington right now is not just the wins, but they're beating the teams that they're supposed to beat the way that they're supposed to beat them. So that shows me that they're a little bit better of a team than I had them projected, besides the record. And Dan Quinn seems like, I keep seeing these videos, like he's got the buy-in in the locker room.
I was gonna say that. I think the chemistry is legit. In Washington.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels only threw 25 passes. I think he ran the ball 8 times. So we factor in maybe a couple of design runs and some dropbacks that turned into runs. That's my concern.
Can he make it through the season?
I don't think he didn't get blasted.
No, he didn't get beat up yet, but he just runs
all these guys are going to get hit.
Yeah, he just runs a lot.
But that's what I'm saying. But he only dropped back 25 times. A lot of guys get hurt in the pocket. Derek Carr got hurt in the pocket on all-out blitzes.
Well, Derek Carr never met an injury he didn't want, so, you know.
So as soon as he hit the ground, he was out. I just think the buy-in for Washington, but I think that comes from Dan Quinn being a head coach before, have one of the biggest collapses occur under his watch, and then having his work his way back through. Especially because he was a successful coordinator in Seattle, had a very dynamic group at the Legion of Boom, gets his job as a head coach with Atlanta. They have a historic season, then they have a historic collapse that was followed by a couple of years of games that they were they'd be up 16 to 17 points, 4 or 5 minutes left and lose games. So I think he had that. Then he went to Dallas, led the resurgence of their defense, and now he's like, okay, right. I've been through all of this stuff. I've seen all of this. So now when he talks to Jaden, it's like, listen, I've seen all of this stuff play out. Mm-hmm. Trust me, Cliff's been, college levels, high dynamic, Texas Tech. He had
Kyler Murray.
He had Kyler Murray in the NFL. He got fired, he got run off. So you have two guys that have been through something. Eberflus should have already been fired, but yet he still has his job. And I don't know if those guys can go to Caleb like, listen, this is all you got to do. I've been through this, blah, 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 because they haven't gone through it. And that's the difference. I think Jaden being a Heisman Trophy playing at a high level at LSU and the SEC, like I said, I go back to his Arizona State transfer, how
100%.
he, how he was looked at there, and he's a little older. I like how they're playing. I think they're playing very, very
absolutely not. You gonna say you are, but absolutely not.
Hey, I gave him a shot.
I don't know how the Giants pulled it off, but they pulled it off. So, Thursday night we got a big one. San Francisco traveling to Seattle. Obviously, this isn't our pick show, but since it's Thursday night, you got an early lean on that one? Can the 49ers go into Lumen Field, home of the 12th man?
Shout out to Residente. I like Purdy, but I'm not sure he's a backpack guy.
He's definitely a backpack guy.
You
don't remember those 2 playoff games last year?
I think he's a we're all in this together guy.
Well, I mean, he's single-handedly.
I'm gonna hold it down. I'm gonna do my part. You do your part. But when it's like when the blocking isn't great, and I get no quarterback is good when the.
Well, I mean, he got his arm hit on that last pass,
Or if the offense isn't flowing, it's just like I don't see him. He's not quite Aaron Rodgers, where basically Aaron Rodgers just says, "You know what? I'm not hurting myself. I'm gonna throw this ball away. I'm not running for 8 yards." I don't know. I think the pending contract negotiation that's gonna happen inevitably at the end of this year, and the money and the pressure, because he knows if he gets $55 million, because Dak just got 60, I don't think he's gonna get that, but he's probably gonna get over 50. You're not gonna be able to pay all these guys. Guys are gonna leave, and it's like I don't know if we're seeing this is what it's gonna look like when these guys are gone. I want to lean that way.
I'm taking the Niners. I got no questions about it, just because they need it.
I'll take Seattle just because it's at home.
When you got 2 teams that need a game, I'm gonna take the better team.
The road team.
I go with the better team, because a lot of times what happens is the worst team needs the game more than the better team. And that's where your upset comes from, because they're playing with their backs against the wall. But the 49ers back are against the wall too. And they've been there. They've done that. And Seattle's still relying on Geno Smith. So I'm going with the 49ers.
Who leads the league in passing yards?
Cool. Cool story. Who lost their last 2 games?
A lot of guys.
Joe Burrow. Anyway, speaking of losing games, I told y'all not to snooze on last Saturday. Did I not say don't snooze?
We tried.
Alabama, come to the carpet. Enjoy this lashing. Who the hell do you think you are that you can run into Nashville and think that you're going to escape with a win just because you got a big-ass A on your field, just because you got numbers on the side of your helmet? Do you not know who Diego Pavia is? Did you not see him go into Auburn, into Jordan-Hare last year, walk out with a 21-point win? You thought you were just going to come into Nashville because you beat Georgia? Now, look, obviously a little bit of that is tongue-in-cheek, right? So look, Vanderbilt is not your brother's Vanderbilt. They coming into this season with a win over Virginia Tech. They took Missouri to overtime, and then again, we just saw what happened to Missouri the other day. But, Alabama ran into some of the things that I was talking about earlier this season when I said they weren't going to make the playoff. That secondary is atrocious. Malachi Moore showed more fight as time was running out of the game than the secondary did the whole rest of the game.
Yeah, shout out to Malachi Moore for standing on his outburst and apologizing, standing in front of the media.
Cole still looked like shit.
He handled the media conversation better than most of these NFL quarterbacks do when they get up to the podium and start stumbling and rumbling over their words. So shout out to him for owning up and accountability. But yeah, at some point, as the favorite even on the road, even if the other team is hot, just go back to the advantage that you have. There's no team outside of, I'm gonna give you like Georgia, Texas, maybe a Wisconsin, maybe BYU, Utah, one of these teams. There's not many defensive lines that can match up with an Alabama offensive line at all. Just assert your dominance by running the ball. Just running the You got a running quarterback who's probably 6'4", 220, been in a system, been at college for a while, been in a system this year, successful. You have dynamic wide receivers. So the pass has to be respected. And then you just dominate with the run. You shouldn't be throwing passes trying to get back in games when you are an Alabama, offensive line. I just feel like sometimes you get away from it. You get away from it too early. Just literally first 3 plays, we're going halfback dive. I'm bringing everybody downhill. I'm bringing in extra tight ends. I'm hitting everybody who just took their chemistry test on Friday. And now, listen, I'm not trying to go to the league. I'm not dealing with these big-ass behemoths. And you just slowly beat them down. But if you throw them and they get set passes of interceptions, you have bad fumbles, you have, out of position corners, because anything can happen. But you're going to 9 times out of 10, if you are the better ranked team, if you dominate the line of scrimmage, there's only so many big plays the other team is going to get off. But if you got the ball for 6 and 7 minute drives, beating the hell out of them, you take the air out of the stadium.
And just join me real quick. I'm gonna say a quick prayer for Cocktober. Saying Cocktober is through. Ole Miss came through with the 27-3 win, and you get Bama coming off of that loss. Cocktober's done. I'm sorry, but what got me about this game is because when you see an upset normally, there's turnovers involved. There's just like a whole lot of bad luck, it seems, for the favorite. And I know Bama had the unfortunate pop-up pick 6 that Vanderbilt took to the house. But the thing that stood out to me about this game more than anything, Vanderbilt had the ball for 42 minutes and 8 seconds. I don't know how that's possible going back to what you just said.
Run the ball offensively, you can't shoot a clock.
But Vandy shouldn't be able to run the ball good enough to hold the ball that long.
Well, that's the thing. When you are a team on the field, you dictate the mood to the other team, good, bad, or indifferent. So if you're beating them and punching them in the mouth, that resonates through the entire team, into the fans, into administration that's watching.
But how much?
If you never assert that piece and they're feeling themselves and the crowd never gets out of the game then you start to press. You start doing like as we talked with Josh Allen. Josh Allen's having a terrible game against Houston.
Mm-hmm.
In that situation, run the ball 3 times, make Houston use their timeouts, punt the ball deep. They catch the punt with 4 seconds left. You go into overtime and you regroup. But what was happening on the field, Houston was dictating to Buffalo, this is where the ferocity is. This is where the intensity is. We're bringing it. You're not. When you run the ball effectively, you dictate to the other team. We are the intensity in this situation.
Right.
Vanderbilt took that opportunity to be like, we are 42 minutes out of a 60-minute football game. Like, that's a certain dominance.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's like a little more than 17 minutes for Bama, by the way. Maybe Georgia laid something
and
out.
They still got 35 points in that 17 minutes. Imagine if you thought in the first half,
we're gonna go to the warning track.
We're gonna get a bunch of points because we're just flat out better than them. Let's dominate them.
Right.
Don't give them an opportunity to think that they can win.
So then you thought it was over, right? But if you listen to Sports Reports is Ordered on Friday night, somebody sat in this here chair in front of this Alex English jersey, and they said, beware, Tennessee. You're going down to Vietnam. Saturday night football. Arkansas is just one of those weird teams. ask Texas, ask LSU. I even said that on Friday. Teams go to Arkansas, especially Arkansas teams that you should handle, and then you fuck up. So Nico, right? Nico, we always crowning these guys. Week 2, when Nico was beating up on Chattanooga and these other teams, we were saying, oh, this guy is a Heisman candidate. Oh, Nico is the truth. Nico's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes. People were saying all this crazy stuff. Nico went down to Vietnam and went 17 of 29, 158 yards and no touchdowns. And Mr. Logical, real quick, did you see how that game ended?
Unfortunately, I was out doing, family
It was
stuff.
4th and 1. As time was expiring from about the 30, young Nico getting chased around ran out of bounds. So he never even got the throw off. So that's I'm gonna give him a pass for that. He's a first year starter and all that. But this is
everybody knows what out of bounds is.
Right, but this is what I'm saying. Like, we got to stop before we start trying to crown these people. Like, this is Jackson Arnold all over again, potentially. I don't want to go that far, but I'm just saying it could be. And then when you thought it was over, you blinked, you looked over in Minneapolis, and you said, USC is about to lose to Minnesota? Oh, yeah, 2-5 told you that one, too. Because USC is still the soft team that they've been the last 5 years. The problem is y'all see SEC on somebody's jersey and you think that automatically makes them good. LSU is not a good football team. USC is still riding the wave from beating LSU.
Beating LSU, yeah.
And then they went into Michigan, and what happened? Khalil Mullins said, "Get the hell off me, Marshawn Lynch style." Got into the end zone, beat USC, and then Darius Taylor from Minnesota ran 444 against them. Good luck, USC. Penn State coming in this weekend. So then Michigan, our guy, Alex Orji.
Ooh, did he crack 86?
He got benched. He got benched
for a dude that went to high school with Chris Olave.
Yeah, Jack Tuttle. Yep. And what did I say on Friday? I said, give me Washington. Because Washington was one of those teams that top 20 offense and defense in the nation, and Michigan reminds me a lot of, and I mean, not one for one, but they remind me a lot of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the fact that you have talent, but every team you play is going to be in the game because of your style of play. How
is this guy starting quarterback? I know you watch him at practice.
I think Michigan should still play Orji.
But if he can't throw,
I mean, look. Look.
We're not running the Navy offense over here.
Right now, Michigan doesn't have an NIL program, so it's either Orji, Tuttle.
They have a scouting department. They
do. But what I'm saying is, like,
people who scout
Orji is still young.
How do you have a guy out there who can't throw the ball?
Orji is still young. So you let him take his lumps. You're not winning.
Is young.
You're not winning the national title
2 weeks ago.
You're not winning the national title. You're probably not going to win the Big Ten. Just let the season play out. See if he improves, and then next year you evaluate and bring somebody else in.
How many pass plays did they call from? I think he was like 10 for 18 for 86 yards a couple weeks ago.
Orji is terrible. He is terrible. But I think all three of them are terrible. That's the problem. All three quarterbacks are terrible. Who's the one that brings something dynamic to the table?
Who's the least bad?
Yeah, like who's the one that brings something dynamic to the table? Like what does Davis
12 for 22 for 97 yards, but you might be able to break a 76-yard touchdown.
Well, what does Davis Warren do? What does Davis Warren do that warrants you to play him? What does Jack Tuttle do that warrants you to play him? Or you can at least make a defender miss and gain some yards.
Yeah, but if I'll put eight guys in the box, and if he can't beat the man-to-man coverage with a throw, then
you'll play Sparty eventually. It'll get right. You'll play Sparty eventually. And then I guess Missouri were the frauds that I didn't think they were. That was the one I did get wrong because I thought they were going to beat Texas A&M, but they got molly-whopped.
Game.
Yeah, they got molly-whopped. Now,
the blanket to the hotel room? No,
so actually, let's talk about that for a second. I like
that. That was
you can't like it no more. You can't like it no more because now we found out that Missouri's coach did that because he was trying to motivate his receiver. So it was cool because we thought Willie put the blame. Yeah, we thought he did it, and I was like, swag of the year award right there
because he wore it to the game. He wore it in pregame. I'm like,
okay, but we found out that the coach did it.
That's why a clip of Ocho Cinco sent the Pittsburgh secondary some Pepto Bismol before the game. He said, "You're gonna be sick to your stomach all game."
Yeah. And for random notes, real quick before we get on to this NBA Western Conference, how about this, Mr. Logical? The freaking Wahoos are 4-1.
Let's talk about Army and Navy being 5-0.
We're gonna talk about that. Let me get through my notes. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about it. But Virginia, I'm here to warn you, it's over. You got Louisville, you got at Clemson, so chalk both of those up. UNC at Pitt, at Notre Dame, SMU, Vatech. They're 4-1 right now. They might not make a bowl.
11-1.
Go
11-1 just to prove it's wrong.
Army and Navy both 5-0, right? Come on now, give it up for the troops.
Navy looked good, and one of the commentators was talking about how normally when they play another service academy, the ability to defend the run is a little higher because that's the style that they play.
Right.
So they practice against it all the time. That's the style that they play. And Navy, this quarterback Horvath, I mean, they kept calling him Staubach, like Roger Staubach, because he won a Heisman in Navy. He looked so comfortable in what they were doing, but then they said that's what he ran in high school.
Brian Newberry, the new head coach, and what's special about Army and Navy,
averaging 46 points.
What's special about Army and Navy is that no, not Horvath.
Horvath.
With a B.
I heard Horvath too. I was like, please.
This ain't Amsterdam. This is Sports Reports is order. But there is a possibility because both teams play Notre Dame this year. So there's a possibility that they could meet each other, at 10-1, last game of the season, and then meet the next week for the AAC championship.
And then Army-Navy game.
Yeah, well, they play each other in Army-Navy, but then they play each other.
They play the championship game first.
Yeah, the championship game first, then Army-Navy. So
it could be like if they're hypothetically they're both undefeated in the championship game.
One of them can make the playoffs.
They could make the playoffs off of that championship victory,
right?
And then the following week
lose to the
other team.
Yeah,
and it's like.
Yeah, so I'm here for all of that.
If that's the case, put them both in.
And Mr. Logical's
something different.
Mr. Logical's most hated coach, Pat Narduzzi, 5-0, the Pitt Panthers for the first time since 1991.
I guess all that bitching and whining he did all of a sudden like NIL is paying off.
UNLV, they took their first loss. So when they play Boise this year, and Dallas Mike will have that Boise Dallas Mike will have
Victor Alpha Tango Hotel.
Dallas Mike will have that the Boise State Broncos are in bed with Las Vegas because Ashton Genty came out 13 rushes, 186 yards in the first half against Utah State. Didn't play in the second half. The over under for his yardage was 188.5. Ooh, talk about a bad beat.
Rigged.
Texas Tech. I brought up Texas Tech. I picked them to beat Arizona. They went out and beat Arizona. So they gone from giving up 51 points in week 1 to Abilene Christian and losing to Washington State. And now they're undefeated in the Big 12. So shout out to Texas Tech for overcoming the perseverance and all that. Miami out here getting saved by the refs again. Berkeley, the woke had Coke on the ropes. They had Michael Irvin doggy style. And before you went to bed, there was a targeting that wasn't called. There was an illegal man downfield on the touchdown that wasn't called. So the Hurricanes are still undefeated.
You need to stop. You need to stop. I raised my son, and I don't get on my hands and knees to watch his games.
You know what I'm saying? Like that man was out there looking like Havana Ginger out there, you know, but
that's old school for you
yeah,
young folks. Go ahead and Google her.
So no, don't Google her, y'all. But
don't Google her on the laptop, not the school laptop. Do it on your phone.
But we were talking about Trent Dilfer last week. I was talking about Trent Dilfer. Way to back it up by giving up 70 points to Tulane. You'll appreciate this one, Mr. Logical. San Jose State head coach Ken Niamataalu, I think I said that right, formerly of Navy, got San Jose State at 4-1. So congrats out there. It's not just a Boise and UNLV match. Michigan is the new Iowa. Houston, big props. First Big 12 win. You came into your first 2 Big 12 games, no points. You said, fuck it. We putting up 30 on TCU, and we going to get a win. Ollie Gordon, we talked about him, Doak Campbell Award winner, 13 rushes for 50 yards, so his season total through 6 games now is 384 yards.
Oklahoma State.
Yep. So ESPN, Kirk Morrison made the statement. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. He kind of went Zion Williamson with it, where Ollie looked like maybe he banged up his ankle. And Morrison said, hey, you know what? That should be the last snap he plays for Oklahoma State this season. What you think about that?
Seems like a stretch to get rid of a guy. I don't know if he was projected to be an early round draft pick, first or second round, third round. I don't know if the whatever situation that created DUI is impacting him, because to go from a college award winner 1 year, get a year older, a year bigger, a year stronger, a year more knowledgeable in your system, and to not come back and replicate those numbers, that's a telltale sign to me. It's like most of these, as you get older, like we talk about, quarterbacks that are 23, 24, 25 and how they're dominating these young defenses. Is like, you should be doing the same thing. So it might be something more underlying with that situation. I definitely don't think it should be his last snap. Like, I mean, it's college football. Like, I think
remember we talked about Alan Bowman and how you got a 1,700-yard rusher and you're out here with 15 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. So he's been benched a few times already this year as well. So like Oklahoma State just not having a good year. Maybe it's time to move on from Mike Gundy finally.
Yeah, you might need a new voice. You might need a new voice. I'm 40. I'm a man was like 10 years ago.
No, he's actually 57 right now. Yeah.
Jesus.
About that. So, let's talk some NBA, right? The other night we talked about the Eastern Conference. Not much changing over there. I know Philly and New York made their moves, but it's still all about the Celtics over there for the time being. So let's talk about the West for a second. Is there a team in the West that stands out to you that you're looking forward to see this year?
OKC.
Okay, tell me more.
I like OKC. They were young. They added some muscle and Isaiah Hartenstein in the middle. I think Chet getting a year older. I think the way they play is very free-flowing. I like the fact that they go 10, 11 guys deep on some nights, even in the playoffs where teams tend to tighten their rotation. They still were running out 9, 10, 11 guys. They were all effective. I think a lot of the other teams in the West got older and they lost players. I think the Lakers hiring JJ Redick makes them like a pseudo rebuild. I think the Clippers letting Paul George go and keeping Kawhi just to open that new stadium. Same ideology, semi-rebuild.
The Intuit Dome.
Yeah, and apparently, like, it's supposed to have all like the cutting edge interactive aspects.
Well, hopefully, it got a bunch of PlayStations in there because that might be more entertaining than watching the actual team.
You know what? Keep it 100. It might be. I mean, it's probably Xboxes because it's Steve Ballmer, but I imagine maybe it's probably gonna be a section where, hey, guess what we did? We put 500 Xboxes in this section so you can play 2K while you watch the game. Whatever they gotta do to get people in that building, have to do it because the Lakers have been king of California. Like Ja Morant coming back, hopefully they can work Zach Edey into the mix.
Hey, they're working on the 3-point shot as we speak.
I like Houston's youth. New Orleans, I just feel like they just never really addressed their chemistry issues, or if they have them, I don't know why they have them. I mean, Like I liked obviously Minnesota, but like I said, I'm not sure about the move. I don't know if Julius Randle and Ant work together unless they can get somebody else to kind of Julius, you get me Cat's points that were taken away, and Nas, you get some more of the points, and then you guys can combine and get the rebound. So obviously Dallas is a good look, but I don't think Dallas gets
that
enough.
I'm thinking about is Dallas, because
I don't think they have enough to keep running because you can't just keep riding Luka's back like that.
Well, I don't know, I don't know what you get from Clay at this point. Like maybe you get the early season benefit from it. He's motivated again, fresh scene. Golden State think they could just get rid of me. So maybe you come out the first 30, 40 games. But I'm sorry, another year older, those legs start getting tired late March.
But these guys are they're not old like we're old. Like
they're older.
They're still like he's still professional.
They're older. You telling Clay to potentially go out here. You're telling Clay potentially go guard SGA or somebody.
No, why would you do that?
Because who else going to guard him?
One of these young ass dudes off the bench that are 20. The dudes,
the bench don't play the whole game.
If you can't rent
go guard Steph, huh?
If you can't rent a rental car without like paying an extra fee because you're under 25, then you're
he is. His legs are older than me.
Like you're going to be guarding these guys who score and run the ball. You could probably have Clay on a guy like Azor Thompson or something like that. Like he's not going to be guarding one of these guys that dribble the hell out of the ball. Like that's where you're going to bring in a defender, who
right? But Dallas's defense is. I know we focus on Luka, but their defense is the reason why they went on the run that they went on when they picked up PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford. Problem is like Clay. I feel at the stage of his career takes away.
It wasn't wing defenders. That was just let's funnel everybody to live.
No, it was just defensive players, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. But now. But the difference is with Clay on the floor now, saying before you already had to mask Kyrie to some degree. Luka was making an effort on defense at times, even though he still wasn't very good. But now you're adding another negative defender.
Oh, I don't think that they're going to be top tier defensively. I just don't think that Clay's defensive liabilities, for lack of a better word, is going to be like the thing that really impacts. Because I don't think you're going to have him on the floor in highly defensive expectations in situations on the floor anyway. Like you're going to go offense for defense in that end of the game in those last couple of minutes. He's going to be the guy that comes off, and they're going to put somebody else in for defense. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about it, all you have to defend in the NBA right now, realistically, is the 3-point line, and then the 3-point line on this side. And then the 3-point line in the corner, and the 3-point line at the top of the key.
And that's why I'm not as high.
Getting to the bucket. Kyrie's getting to the bucket. Luka's shooting mid-range. Josh shooting the mid-range. Kawhi shooting the mid-range. DeMar is still in the East.
Yeah, we'll get to that. To him. I think that's why I'm not as high on Memphis as everybody else is. Because I know it's easy to look back and say, well, hey, 2 years ago, last time Ja was healthy, they were the 2 seed. But they're also relying on injured dudes like Jaren Jackson. They don't have the spacing, I feel, so they need superhuman efforts from Ja.
Ja can't, you can't hit the floor this year, player.
Yeah.
Let the block go.
Yeah.
Shoot the floater. Don't go for the dunk. Stop hitting the floor. You weigh 178.
Well,
if that.
Well, like as I think about Sacramento, you brought up DeMar DeRozan. So Sacramento is to me, they're the definition of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They went out and got DeMar DeRozan, so now they have the number 1 and number 2 clutch players in the league. From last season, DeMar DeRozan and De'Aaron Fox. But you still. There's still a lot to be desired on the defensive end, and I think DeRozan just gets in the way, as De'Aaron is trying to facilitate, as Malik Monk is trying to get loose. DeMar's just there in the way, restricting the flow that in a way that it wasn't before. And Sabonis is still not necessarily a big man in the sense of protecting the paint.
I don't think there's that many teams that are going to rest their hat on defense anyway. I think a lot of teams will rest their hat on individual defensive mismatches, like Chet Holmgren in Oklahoma City just being 7'2". Well, obviously, San Antonio didn't make many moves to have Chris Paul, but like having Wemby as a guy that you can just funnel guys to. Same thing with Dallas. I think a lot of teams
now. You being disrespectful. Why are you acting like the Spurs didn't go get world champion Harrison Barnes
as a coach? They're gonna let him play? Oh, that's cute. It's like when they let the managers play in those high school videos. Yeah, so like once again, that's a bad combination of old ass dudes and young ass players. But those teams, their identity is basically funnel the guy with the ball to our big men that are defending the rim. And I think that's the essentially like the concept of most of these defensive teams. Not a lot of guys who sit in the chair and just really defend top of the key. When it's Steph, you'll have a guy that chase Steph's around. That's all he's going to do. It's going to be 5-on-4 offensively because the guy chasing Steph around is going to save all of his energy. So when he goes back to the other end, I got to chase Steph around. I don't know if it is going to look the same without Clay, but I mean, if you're getting Clay 10 to 12 shots a game from the corner off a couple of dribbles, I imagine you can get somebody else to fill in that role.
All right, so hey, I'm
looking for a young team. I'm looking for another young superstar to step up and really make their mark. SGA was a guy that a lot of people felt should have been MVP last year. I'm looking for another guy that could potentially do that.
All right, so
give me another superstar because the rest of the superstars are my age and I got gray in my beard.
So here's a question. I just pulled up a random sports book just now.
Okay.
What do you think? Because I like to ask you these questions. What do you think they have the Lakers over under set as?
Over under for wins?
Yeah.
I saw something. I don't want to look it up now, but I saw something. I thought that number was too high. I think what I saw had them at like 46 and 36 or something.
So what I'm looking at right now has them at 43.5.
The problem is, I think the guy they need to play 70 games to get them those 43 wins is going to be 40 years old. That's the problem. He's going to have to take some days off. It's just, there's no way to play the way he plays, even when he's kind of like letting guys do their thing. If it's 93 to 92 in the last 5 or 6 minutes, he's on the ball every possession. He's probably going to ramp up defensively every possession. So what LeBron has to do for the Lakers, he's going to have to do for 80% of the season. It just doesn't seem likely that they can sit him for 12 games. Because like I said, it's always best case scenario, he plays 68 games. So that gives you 14 games off. You got a 6-month season. He gets one to 2 games off a month.
Okay.
Best case scenario. So,
well, I mean,
you get him 70 games. It's like the best case scenario you can get. But in those 70, if he's on the floor and is close, he's not coming off. He's not taking his breaks. You have a rookie head coach who's gonna listen to everything that he says. I don't know if he's gonna be like, nah, you're gonna take your 5-minute break. We're taking you out at 9 minutes in the first or 3 minutes left in the first. You're not going back in until 7.5 in a second, and you're down. You could be down 2 or 3 when he goes out, and be down 12 by the time he gets back in. I don't know how many games you go doing that.
Yeah, so like the Lakers for me are, when I think of that 43.5, I think they can hit it. I think they can get to 44. The problem is as much as you talked about how they need LeBron, I'll just say his name and break the seal, if you will.
I said LeBron.
Okay, my bad. And then, but Anthony Davis, I don't want to say it's now or never because we're way past that. But at some point, you got to look to become the man. You got to look like you want to become the man. So what I'm looking for Anthony Davis is
he's limited though.
He is, but he's also the type of dude that needs to touch the ball on every possession. And there's way too many possessions that the Lakers have that the ball doesn't touch his hands.
But it's very similar to Embiid. Jokic touching the ball, Jokic is like a combination of AD and LeBron. Whereas if he gets it on the block, there is an opportunity for him to shoot, take it to the cup, get fouls, shoot free throws, or be a playmaker. And all of these things run concurrently while he has the ball in his hand.
Right.
Embiid and AD and like Sabonis and some of these guys, it's a matter of like, we're gonna get you 18 to 20 shots, but because you don't do much else with the ball, like it's not a lot of plays you make with the ball in your hand, like that start with Anthony Davis getting the ball, and then this is set up and this is set up, and Austin Reeves on the back cut, and then he gets a layup off of the AD action. You gotta go. You gotta.
Well, that's what JJ Redick's for, right? That's what he's for, to draw up that type of stuff.
JJ Redick was coaching his kids last year.
You don't think JJ Redick could call a play? Like, I'm not saying that he's going to come into the league and be a top 5 coach or something, but he was a dude that played basketball running off of screens and curls. You don't think he could just come up with a concept?
You can come up with that, but you got to turn a guy who's not a playmaker into a playmaker. Certain guys have it. LaMelo Ball's a playmaker. He has it. Jimmy Butler's a grinder.
You also can't be a playmaker if I don't have you try to make plays.
Yeah, you got to be healthy, but it's like AD. It's like I said, it's just certain guys just do certain things with the ball. Jokic can do things with the ball that AD, and I'm not saying he's not capable of doing it, but that's not his MO. Like Zion Williamson, he's not a playmaker with the ball in his hand on the block. He's a scorer when he gets the ball on the block. Even Ja Morant at the top of the key is not a playmaker getting guys open. He is just he's a playmaker as far as like a scorer. He can make things happen that way.
Well, speaking
of LeBron does more, AD doesn't do that. So it's like AD can take that next step, but it's going to be a lot like Embiid when you need a guy like Maxey that can do the other things that you just simply can't do.
So what do you tell a Laker fan or, someone if they say, hey, we in there, we lost to Denver the last 2 years?
You lost to Denver, but I don't really think people believe that you really had a chance to beat Denver.
I mean, hey, to be fair, last year, each game of that series, they were up 10 points at least, and Denver walked them down a lot, So, I mean, like, if you're the Lakers, and I mean, this is just going off of who Denver is.
Because they have the best, no matter how people feel about LeBron, you can say whatever you want. What he does on the basketball court, even as he's getting older, in those short spurt crunch time moments, because like the man is like 22 years in the league. For God's sake, his son is in the league. Like that's how he's played against other people's parents. That kid eliminated some of those guys from the playoffs, and now his own kids in the league. Like he's been in there for a while. It's only so much you can expect him to do. And I think he's one of the greatest athletes ever play any sport in the history of the planet. But time is time and math is math. He can't give you 36 top quality minutes for 82 games to the point where that's what you're going to need. I mean, like we saw with the Olympics, he still is by far the best playmaker. He is the guy when you have players around him that like, listen, we go to him. And then Steph, once again, woke up in Serbia and then the France game. But throughout the Olympic run, like that's what LeBron does. But that was a 3.5 week run in the summer when he had been off for 2 months.
Right. Yeah. So the Lakers are just, I don't know. Like if they truly want to end up contending, they're going to have to try to find a move.
They can't make a move.
There's no move to be made.
They're handcuffed because of the players. The GM is inadequate at what he does with his job, and he gave all these guys deals that they can. He gave guys deals with player options on player minimum deals. It's like you don't give these guys because they basically just took spots. Like the guys that he brought in, like guys like Jackson Hayes, D'Angelo Russell. I think what's the boy name? Austin Reeves got a good deal, but a lot of these guys, Rui, they got these player option deals. Mm-hmm. So there's no leverage for the team. they opted into and they're opting into player minimums like $1, $2, $3 million. So it's not even like that much money against the cap. It's just that you gave the guys at the end of your bench the opportunity to fill up the end of your bench to guarantee that they got their $1 to $3 million. And now you don't have guys on the team that are valuable trade bait. And coupled with the fact that it is kind of rumored throughout the league that no one really wants to help LeBron because it is about like LeBron getting the team that he needs.
Right.
Like, I don't think a lot of because if you give him if LeBron has the pieces, and I don't know what those pieces are, but if he has the pieces where he can take offensive possessions off, imagine like okay, hypothetically, if Ant was on the same team with LeBron, and he could just give him the ball in the offensive end and just draw attention by just sliding to the opposite block and like letting the guy like Ant do his thing. I know that's like an upper echelon like draft pick, but a guy who has that kind of skill set. Because other teams have it where you have a couple of guys that can do that. Like we go with like Cat and Jalen Brunson. We'll go back to the East. Cat can give the ball to Jalen Brunson and step back and watch. But the defense still has to respect wherever Cat is because Cat can shoot, from anywhere and he handles the ball, so that's the difference. The Lakers never addressed that. Anthony Davis is great near the hoop, maybe 15 feet out. He does have, a better jumper, but you'll live with him shooting 12 jumpers.
He will do it.
He'll shoot them. And he'll shoot those 12 because it's like, I don't want to have to bang down here all day long. And if they don't drop, now LeBron can't go to the bench.
Right. And there you go, folks. The hand them the title Dodgers are down to the brink of elimination. 2 games to 1 Padres. Yeah. So
shout out to the Mets. The Mets are up too. Shout out to Chris. He keeps hitting me up like we don't talk about the Mets enough. So the Metropolitans.
Yeah, I told him baseball's over, bro. Like, don't even worry about it. You know what I'm saying? But keeping it in California and maybe matter of fact, let's just keep it in the same city. Norm Powell. I don't know if he was throwing some shots out there or what, but he made the comment of we're living subtraction or addition by subtraction. So, so Paul's out of there. I can only take that as a shot at Paul George. The Clippers are one of the worst teams that you could ever watch play basketball because they have a lot of players that I like to watch play basketball or that I think are very good basketball players, but I just don't want them nowhere near each other. Norm Powell, Terrence Mann, Amir.
I think their expectations. I think their expectations too high.
They are because I never thought they were a contender back in Lob City. And I don't think they're a contender. They weren't a contender.
Now. I like the Lob City contender because I thought the Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. I thought that dynamic was like.
I think this team is better than that team.
I think it's like. But I think those teams are enough to stress another team's defense. I don't think the current Clippers. I mean, you guard Kawhi.
Well, not today, but I thought that like when the Clippers first got together, I took them more seriously as a contender than I ever took Lob City.
Well, I didn't take them seriously as a defender because their guys just. And
then I stopped because I saw they had Doc Rivers as their head coach, so I stopped taking them seriously.
The availability of a lot of their superstars was the part that just really locked
right. And now,
if they made an NBA Finals run one year, then the following year I'd probably be like, you know what, maybe they've got it figured out. But the fact that they were never healthy enough to even compete, like Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. You guys like James Harden. These guys were never like healthy late into the playoffs collectively. Like all of them on the floor, Game 6 Western Conference Finals. Like, they got a chance to go into the final. Like, they never even ascended to that point. So when people were picking them preseason, it's like you're picking them based off of their 2K ratings or the fact that they're just like physically just the perfect basketball player. Like we talked about Jason Tatum was like. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden at 6'5", 6'6", being able to handle the ball and score the way he does is like that's an advantage, but it never seemed to sync up. So that's the part where I never got when people were like, oh, it's gonna be a Clippers Heat final. I was like, based off of what?
Right. Yeah. So the Clippers are just they're going to be lucky to make the play in this year. And depending on what Kawhi offers as far as availability, they may not even get close to that. But keeping it in California, Golden State, we mentioned Klay Thompson going to Dallas. Golden State made some moves. They brought in Buddy Hield. They brought in Kyle Anderson. They brought in DeAnthony Melton. So maybe the defense is improved, by those additions. Buddy Hield theoretically, can hit the amount of shots that Klay can hit, but what's the chemistry? What's the flow? But then the Warriors are still caught up. So we talk about the Pistons. We talked about the Rockets as far as, are you young or old? And that's where Golden State, it paid off because they won the championship back in 2022. But then they couldn't make up their mind on, are we going to continue to go for championships, or are we trying to blend in this new future? Because you still got Kuminga that you're trying to figure out.
They might have been better off, instead of trying to run it back.
They should have broke it up.
They should have broke it up after 2022.
Yeah, because you figure like you're still trying to figure out
their ring and their trophy. Fourth was that was their fourth championship in
like 8 years. Or something like that. Yeah,
let those guys ride that wave out. Send Klay to Orlando.
Yeah, because
maybe you keep Steph because you open arena, Steph and Draymond, but I think they would probably have been better off moving some pieces.
Well, they're still trying to figure out what they have in Kuminga and if they're going to pay him. You still got Moody floating around there. That's, complaining about playing time. You got Podziemski, that you drafted, you didn't want to add to the Paul George trade. So you got to keep him if you wasn't going to make the Paul George move. So they have a lot of young pieces. You still got Andrew Wiggins floating around the arena. So you're still in the same boat where, like, you might win 3 extra games than you won last year.
You're in a mediocre boat. It's going to be a bunch of teams out west that are going to be – they're going to try to make it sound interesting. But, teams 4 through 9 are only separated by a game and a half. But
to be fair, and this is the crazy
they're going to be like 43 and 39, and then your top 3 teams are going to be 55-plus wins.
Yeah, exactly.
With Minnesota, OKC, maybe Denver, you're going to be at 52 to 54 wins, and everybody else is going to be I don't know about Dallas had a good run at the end of the last year, so maybe I'll give Dallas 4. They'll be around 47, like towards the end of that year when they're talking about the playoff position and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you're going to have OKC, Minnesota, and Denver well above 50 wins, and everybody else.
But if you're using
4 through 7.
Well, let's use last year as a baseline.
All right.
How many wins do you think the 10 seed had last year in the West?
10 seed. Was that Houston?
It was Golden State. The last playing spot. Yeah, last playing spot.
Last playing spot. I think they had 45.
46. Yep. 46. So using that as a baseline, you're asking a lot, for some of these teams, in my opinion, as far as how they're constructed now. I think the Lakers getting to 46 is tough. I think that Phoenix getting to 46, we ain't even talk about them yet. Phoenix getting to 46 is tough. Clippers probably aren't getting to 46.
At least Phoenix has the firepower to potentially get to 46.
Well, I do like the fact that Phoenix, their firepower contingent on availability, I like more than the entirety availability of the Clippers. I agree.
Kevin Durant, Booker, Bradley Beal. I think these other role players you have can fill in guys who are like, listen, blue guys, rebound, play tough defense, scrap for the ball. These 3 dudes are going to get you 75 points. You feed them and make sure they get 75 points. I think Phoenix is fine. But if you got clips where you got hamstrings and these guys are missing 6 games, and then the other guy has a knee, he's missing 6, and another guy has a foot, and he's missing 10, and they all overlap, then you can just
that's the problem that the Suns had anyway, because their big 3, if you will, didn't play a lot of games together anyway.
Very similar to Kevin Durant in Brooklyn, so it's like you just kind of carried that same baggage.
I do like the fact that they went out and got Tyus Jones. I do like that pickup because that's what Vogel was asking for. Get me a point guard. They fired him and then they got the point guard. Yeah. Mike Budenholzer taking over. So, so I think Phoenix might be set up
And I think he's good, and he's good at managing the minutes of a star because he was managing Giannis's. I think Giannis is playing 32 minutes. It's just availability.
I think Phoenix could finish top 5.
Yeah, if they're all on the floor, I know defense wins championships, and I understand that. But in the regular season, when you play, so you play 82 games, I imagine you play like 22 to 24 against Eastern Conference teams. It's probably how the schedule works out. So if you got a couple of games with Charlotte, a couple of games with Orlando that doesn't really score the ball that great, I think you could run off a 6 or 7 game. You go on an 8-game road. You win 6 out of 8. I think you can make those kind of moves. You get Brooklyn, who's probably projected to get like 18 wins. But if you're available, I think you can string those wins together. And
I don't know what to make
out in the West.
I don't know what to make of the Pelicans, because
I do combination. That's why. That's why.
I do like the DeJounte Murray. I like the DeJounte Murray pickup. From the standpoint of your backcourt gets a little bit more dynamic, because I thought that it was been time to get rid of CJ McCollum anyway. Even though he's still there. BI, we talked about him. Like, what's the deal with him? Is he going to be there post All-Star break? If not, you got if so, you got more.
Herein lies our problem. You're going into the season, and you and I, we're just two people who are running have a successful, sports podcast, second best sports podcast in America, by the way. And we're confused on what you're doing with these guys on the floor.
Because it all hinges on that one person staying healthy, right? Because
you're adding a person too. Because Zion's health, he hurt his hamstring. I think they win the Lakers playing game. If you don't,
he had 44 points or something.
I think he had 40 or 44, and they were down. I think when he scored at last point,
I think they tied it up.
Either they tied it up, or they were down like a possession where the Lakers had just kind of stalled.
Yeah,
but he was injured, so I don't know what his health regimen or his stretching or Pilates or whatever he's going with. But I think they're coming into the season once again with the same questions that we have about them every year, and there's never seems to be any kind of resolution. That's like, if you're bad at managing money, it's like, because New Year's come around, you say, I'm going to be better with money this year, but you don't go find anyone to help you manage your money, and then October comes around, how's your money? Yeah, dog, I should really on those.
And then, of course, Valanciunas isn't there anymore. He's a Wizard now. So, they lost their big man. You don't want to win if
you play for the Wizards.
Hey, he's trade bait to get us some picks. But anyway, DeJounte Murray does add a certain level of I don't even know what the word is.
I think it's dynastic.
Is that there you go. Something. Well,
that's
for a dynasty. Yeah. Like he brings a different type of offense for them. I should say that. They still have Trey
versatility.
Right? There you go. They have Trey Murphy and Herb Jones still, so the defense will be fine as well. They still got Alvarado.
They have zero chemistry,
but they don't have chemistry. That's the
none,
problem.
Not an ounce. They have way too much talent to have the same question every year. Because I believe it was 2 seasons ago, CJ McCollum questioned a guy's availability to want to play through injury, and then BI was, I believe, that was a target. I personally thought he was talking about Zion, just from just the just a public eye, like, okay, he's talking about Zion.
Right.
But then some reports came out that was reference to, conversations and interactions he had with BI, from sources inside the organization. And all those same people are there, and they haven't achieved anything that can kind of squash that. Like with the Miami Heat. When the Miami Heat keep going to the NBA Finals, you can ignore their liabilities in between that, because we just went to the NBA Finals in 2020. We went back again, and it's like, we took out Boston. So you have all these things you kind of rest your hat on. New Orleans doesn't have any of that. So I don't know if BI's good trade bait, considering that I think he's either asking for or due like a $200 million deal potentially.
So what you think about this one? Spurs, 35.5.
Not if they don't get the ball to Wemby. It was so many plays where he just was like, even if that wasn't the play, I saw him, he would cut from the wing unabated to the free throw line, and the guy would be dribbling the ball on the other side and not get him the ball.
Especially if it was Devin Vassell or Sohan.
have the white guy named Zach something.
Oh, Zach Collins, yeah.
Zach Collins would be in the game.
I think
I think he'd get the ball a bit more. But because even if Wemby gets the ball, cutting from the wing to the free throw line, it's like you can get so much off of a guy that tall, 10 feet from or 15 feet from the hoop. And he can make things happen from there. Like I say, he doesn't even have to be a great playmaker. Just I see over every defender you're sending at me. If you try to double me, which you're gonna have to, if I got a guy that tall getting the ball, cutting through the lane at 14, 15 feet from the hoop, where he's one dribble finger roll from there, even if you try to defend it, and he's slender, so it's not like he's gonna take up a lot of space. So he can George Gervin it, and they weren't giving him the ball. And I couldn't understand. I stopped watching Spurs games. I watched a lot of
Keldon Johnson. I'm sorry to say because he went to Kentucky, but he's not a starter. So you need to add him to the second lineup there.
You got Chris Paul there.
You got Chris Paul there. You got my guy Steph Castle. Number 3 in the number 4 in the draft. He's there, or 5, number 5 in the draft. Oh, number 4, my bad. Number 4 in the draft. Anyway, he's the future point guard. He brings athleticism. He brings size. So by the time he becomes ready to go in that way, you have him, Wemby, Sohan. You got very long arms in those passing lanes. So, so the Spurs 2-3 years from now
have a coach that's like energetic enough to really because Pop is Biden age.
I'm not buying it. I think everybody right now that I've been hearing and talking to, they are just on the boat of Wemby's just going to be that much better in year 2. So therefore the Spurs are a playoff contender. No, they're not. They're not a playoff contender. They're not even a play-in contender. We're still about a year away from that. Minnesota.
They could surprise you. They can make some, smooth surprise you. But like I said, that combination of young and old is tough. It's tough.
No, every season, I know that every season is different.
There's a surprise.
But like I said, going back to that baseline, you're asking them to win 24 extra games just to get to the play-in. So even if I take 5 games off and say 41 games gets you to play-in, that's plus 19 from last year. I don't know if they got plus 19 in them. They might got plus 7. You know what I mean?
I like that analysis, that astute analysis.
Yeah. So Minnesota, we brought them up shortly earlier, real quick. But, looking at Minnesota, I think that their defense isn't going to go anywhere, which was their strength. So I think there'll still be a factor. I don't think that losing
allow them to mug the offensive players.
Well, that too.
As long as the NBA and the ref allows for that physicality, then I think they'll be fine.
Yeah.
But if that's not the case, then your defenders are going to be on the bench, and you're relying on Julius Randle and Ant-Man to get you points.
Well, you also got Naz Reid, who I think
I'm talking about off the dribble.
No, I know, but I know, but I think that the idea is Naz Reid can give you offensively what Cat was giving you.
Is it still going to be the 6th man though?
That's going to be. Are
they going to try to move? If they try to move to the starting lineup, that kind of changes the whole.
I don't know if he can be because what do you do with impact? What do you do with Julius Randle at that point? Because you got Conley.
You're good to go.
So Conley and Edwards as your guards. Gobert. As your big man. You got Julius Randle, and I don't know if you can play Randle and Reed together and for.
You can't start them because
you
can't. You don't have a wing defender,
right? So he'll probably have to be the 6th man. I do like the rookies that they picked up. Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon. But of course they're rookies, so you just never know.
Small,
and a lot of these coaches don't like to play rookies apparently, unless you're a top 5 pick in the draft. They don't play you very often, so. We'll have to see. Both of those guys are going to be scoring dynamite at some point, like off the bench.
About Dillingham?
Yeah, Dillingham and Shannon. Like they ain't going to give you nothing defensively
because you got Naz Reid as your 6th man, and like I said, Dillingham's small. Like he's smaller than Trae Young.
I want to say like he's like in that Bryce Young range.
Like he's probably listed at 5'11", 190, but he's probably.
Well, I think he's listed at 6'1".
Okay, so he's 5'11", 160.
Yeah. So but the team in Texas to watch out for is those Rockets. Like we just got to figure out who's going to play. You know what? Why people always got to be so hyperbolic?
Let's hear it.
Hold on, let me find it again. I know what he said. I just want to make sure I'm quoting the right person.
Yeah, and I'll speak on what I feel.
Here it is. Yeah. Okay, so Tom Haberstroh says that Reed Shepherd is the closest thing to Steph Curry that we've seen in a long time.
It says the same thing about Seth Curry.
I don't even think Reed Shepherd is that type of player.
Unnecessary.
Like he's a shooter, but he's not that.
There's no one like Steph Curry.
No one. Nobody, baby. Nobody.
Steph's son won't be like Steph Curry, and he can teach him everything.
Riley won't either. But some
people are one of one on this planet. It's okay.
So Houston
under pressure. And where you gonna play Reed Shepherd?
And that was what I was about to say, because
you got a team full of guards.
He's the number 3. He was the number 3 pick in the draft this year. But when you go back to last year, you took him in at number 4. You brought in Fred VanVleet. You still got Jalen Green at the 2, who you're trying to figure out what you got. They were trying to trade him for Mikal
Whitmore.
Yeah, they were trying to trade him for Mikal Bridges. You got Dylan Brooks. Steven Adams is back.
Almost nothing.
Yeah, Steven Adams is back. You got Şengün. You got I can't think of his name. Jabari Smith. You got Jabari Smith.
You have a bunch of guys that
Tari
Eason trying to prove themselves. I'm not sure if you have a bunch of guys that are filling in the required crew complement. That
you got Jeff Green.
So you got a bunch of old ass dudes, some young ass dudes, and then there's
they play the same position. So that's
what I'm saying.
So theoretically, your future is Reed Shepherd. Theoretically, Reed Shepherd is your future with Amen Thompson. That's your future.
But Amen can't shoot.
You know what I mean? He ain't got to shoot. He's the point guard.
He's not a threat. He's not a threat to shoot the ball. So
no, he's not.
The only reason most point guards are threats because I have to worry about your ability to control the floor. Your ability to control the floor also encapsulates your ability to score the rock.
He can play great defense.
You take away a third. You take away a third of my responsibilities.
That's why you draft these dudes, right? Because he's only 19 years old. This is why you draft him, because you say, "Let me get my guys in here. We're going to teach them how to shoot." It doesn't always work.
You got Jalen Green, you have guys that you should be teaching already,
right?
And you're drafting other guys that you should It's like you're a kindergarten teacher, and you're like, okay, cool, I'll take on and I'll babysit the preschool kids too. It's like, no, you already got kindergarten kids. You're trying to teach them letters. Like you can't. Then then I'm gonna take these 4th graders too. They can come here too, and just fuck up the feng shui between this young group that I have here and these old kids. Like you're teaching 2 different ideologies, 2 different concepts at the same time, and they all none of them, as far as I can tell. It's my I've done much research, but I'm not sure what any of them give you without the ball in their hand.
Right.
So if everyone needs the ball in their hand to prove their value, how do you match them up if you have nothing but the same size? Houston's a shit show.
Well, Amen might be the one that blow up. Yeah, and so we'll see. We'll see. But Jazz and Blazers,
18 wins.
I still don't know what the Jazz are doing. I don't know if they're tanking for Cooper Flag. I don't know.
They're selling 41 home games.
That's what they're doing.
We lived in Utah. They love their sports teams. They just want to make sure they're relevant enough and competitive enough to sell out 41 home games.
Yeah, and the Blazers need to make a decision. They drafted Donovan Clingan. They still have DeAndre Ayton. They still have Robert Williams, who's always hurt. He's hurt right now. Anthony Simons is probably a better point guard right now than Scoot Henderson is.
Scoot, he pulled the wool over their eyes. Yeah, I don't. First of all, you look too old to be that young.
Got to check the birth certificate on him.
Yeah,
and you still, but it's the same thing. You still got Shaden Sharp. You know what I mean? But you can't play Anthony Simon.
But it's not as bad as Houston.
No, it's not as bad as Houston.
Because I think you can, in that regard, I think you can move. This is how Houston's team probably would have made more sense if they waited to like this year. Dylan Brooks is a guy that you can bring in to be like your enforcer, but he has to show up knowing like that's his role. Like you don't do anything else. You're not out here trying to shoot threes.
You're the goon.
Like you're light-skinned Tony Allen. Just get used to that. But when you pay him the money you paid him,
he want to shoot.
It comes with like, oh, I'm one of these valued players that you guys brought in. Portland has the opportunity to make a trade for some of their young pieces and get like a veteran in, or they take it for Cooper Flag. That's probably a great market for him. Pacific Northwest,
I think
white
Portland
basketball player.
Brooklyn,
I think that fits perfectly.
Yeah, I think Portland and Brooklyn are hands down the worst teams in the league. I think both of them are going to struggle to get to 24 wins. Utah.
I know we're not talking about the East. You can throw Detroit back in there too. Detroit's going to be in that same realm of 28 wins, 29.
But that's an improvement for them, so they'll take that. You know what I mean? Like
the NBA, the way they set up their teams and the draft and the lottery picks and everything else and the contracts, and we have a big argument a lot of times about the market. The NBA really leaned into letting the players dictate what market I'm going to play in versus like giving these, like San Antonio, maybe you let San Antonio offer $15 more million. So to keep their guy, like you have a guy there. I know the deal now is like your current team can offer you a 5-year deal at the max. The other team can only offer you 4.
Right.
But I'm talking about just in general, just for these teams to be able to keep their all-star players and keep the marquees lit up. Hey, if your market is this size, because we're seeing what's happening in the NFL, you get a player, impact is impact. Arizona, Kyler Murray, Marvin Harris Jr., impact is impact. LA, bunch of injuries, nothing you can do about it. You won't be impactful. So, but in basketball, guys tend to play a little bit better, less injuries, and they tend to go to like stacked teams. So these smaller markets, like, listen, we can offer you X amount of additional cap space to keep your stars.
Right.
Then maybe that a guy like DeJounte Murray would like, cool, I'll go from Atlanta. Well, he was already in San Antonio, but I'll go from, we'll just say he went in San Antonio. Like, all right, I can sign this big deal in Atlanta, big market, or I can go join this young team in San Antonio and get a 10% bump in my annual salary because I'm going to a small market. Something to kind of incentivize movement from New York to Minnesota more often. New York to OKC, New York to Milwaukee, get Orlando involved because they're going to be a good team, but once again, they're going to be sellers if they don't match the same numbers they had last year around the trade deadline. Well, it's like we not have enough money to pay Paolo and keep all these other role players, so it's like, who wants Jalen Suggs?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they drafted Anthony Black last year. They drafted Tristan Da Silva this year, so we'll see if they get minutes. Anthony Black didn't play much last year for whatever reason. Just like Denver, they didn't play my guy Julian Strawther, and they brought in Russell Westbrook now, so
leaving less minutes.
Yep. So we're gonna have to see how that goes, but we will be back on Friday with picks. And then now that we've done with these NBA teams, it's time for us to talk about MVPs, coach of the years, who's going to play in the finals, who's going to win the finals, so on and so forth. So
we'll keep you updated on baseball.
Yes, Padres up
serious.
2-1, Mets up 2-1. So the National League is just about set. Like I said, Liberty and Lynx.
If we get a Subway Series, I'm going to the city.
Speaking of which, you got Cleveland and Detroit over in the American League, tied 1-1. You got Kansas City and the Yankees tied at 1-1. So they pick up tomorrow. So he is the even kill, Mr. Logical. Do not bring feelings to a fact fight. I am your unorthodox statistician. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things. And when you listen to the Sports Reporters Order, make sure you take a shot of liquid death. We love you. See you in a few days. Peace.